Kagurabachi chapter 95 is here, and before we get into it, I just want to talk about something real quick here. I want to talk about the art in the chapter itself. There are some truly rough sketches within this chapter, and some of the pages are basically just storyboards, which means one of two things. Either Ono is suffering the age-old mangaka story with poor health, unfortunately, or he is being pressed for time. And God willing, it is the later option here, because over the past couple of weeks, this man has released Volume 9 cover, a lead page for today's issue. Next week, he is supposedly dropping a double spread as well as a second lead page to celebrate the belated 2-year anniversary of Kagurabachi. And while he's doing this, some of these chapters he has dropped while he's been in America for Anime NYC. So that being said, I don't want to see anyone in my comments talking about how bad the artwork was today, because this dude's been working hard and he deserves some credit. He deserves a break and he deserves all the praise in the world for being able to drop all this kind of stuff weekly and in the quality that he's been doing, okay? Anyways, with that being said, let's just get into the video.
Like, I hate wasted potential. That shit crushes your spirit. It really does. It crushes your spirit.
So, Hokuzono opens up with chapter 95, roughly where we left off in chapter 94, with a conversation between Ichiki and Kasen, wherein Kasen explains that there are actually more families than just the Sazanami clan that have been scattered throughout Japan, and he mentions how until recently, sorcery was sort of practiced within the shadows, and we actually learned this way back in the early days within the series, and it was actually the Seitei War that actually put these sorcerers into the public light, onto the map here. Now, this also does reveal that we're probably going to see more families like the Sazanami clan. It makes me wonder if the Hishaku have been working with more of them. You know, there's obviously other areas of Japan here where these sword bearers may be residing, so potentially just like the Rakuzaichi trying to grab the shinuichi here, there might be other blades that we haven't seen yet where these Hishaku guys are working with other members of the clans here. And also, canon theory here, considering that this was mentioned at the beginning of the chapter and right at the end of the chapter we see Azami, who is like the next level of sorcery. I do wonder if he's going to be related to maybe one of those families. We'll see, I guess. But Kasen talks about the Kaminabi as a whole and described them as a bunch of cobbled together sorcerers with no real legacy. I mean, even today, they still remain in a tense deadlock with those families. We're only barely maintaining a minimal semblance of public order. And it's here that he actually talks about the shinuichi and its power, where he and Ichiki go over a conversation that has obviously been previously hinted at within the series. In fact, I'm now thinking about this chapter. I think it actually kind of recontextualizes a lot of previous information that we've had, because in previous chapters we've had inklings of what has happened, like conversations that divided the Kaminabi, and even how Shiba had, quote, roughed up a few of the guys there in the Kaminabi. And I think this chapter sort of reveals why that conversation happened, as Kasen and the folk who have sided with him on what the power of the Enchanted Blades to rule over the clans and bring law and order, and then there's probably the folk who have been on the opposite side of this and have seen what these blades can do and don't want no part in it, and no one should have absolute power like this for fear of a second malediction, which is, I imagine, where Shiba sat on this scale of things here. But this conversation continues a little bit further with Kasen talking about the Swordmaster, suggesting his execution and establishing a new bearer. However, he refutes this idea by saying the Enchanted Blade is also to blame. The true depths of those swords were unfathomable to even Rokihira. Now, for a long time, I've been of the opinion, crackpot theory here, that these swords, much like their powers, have personalities that change based on the wielders. We saw this most recently with the Kamiyuri in comparison to Uraha and obviously Hirohiko here, where obviously the playability was changed to encounter certain objects or count people as objects, where Uraha probably wouldn't have done that. What I mean here is that these swords all have some sort of nature, whether it's violent or just sort of nature, and I think that nature can be dependent on its wielder. I think of the Enchanted Blade sort of like I previously described them as an unruly teenager with the power of a fucking nuclear blade, essentially. Depending on who's guiding them, but depending on who's wielding them, they can either be a force for good or a force for mass destruction. I think at some point down the line, we will get to learn of these swords' personalities here. I think that's my theory right here, is that these swords do have personalities, much like Bleach and the Zanpakuto over there, and I think that's something that Hokuzono may dive into a little bit later down the line. Something else I think is particularly interesting here is that Kasan says that they contained the Enchanted Blades and established an education system in order to cultivate our successors. Now, given how much people lie within this series, how much they misdirect within this series, I wonder if this education system extends beyond the sorcerers and the successors here, and actually extends into the school, especially how we seen Shihiro recounting the events of the war when he was talking to Iori back then. And then we also have the possibility that Yura was obviously spreading misinformation. So I wonder if Yura and Ken were sort of spewing out misinformation into the education system to sort of sway the public in favor of the Kamanabi wielding these blades. I don't know if Hokuzono would ever go too political with this story, with that kind of notion. It seems very action based, and I don't think the politics of the story is sort of something that he might explore. I mean, maybe he will, but it's here that the conversation starts to come to a head, because Kasan does all but basically have his reverse flash moment here. He basically reveals himself as the traitor within the Kamanabi in order to establish order with the enchanted blades. Now, Kasan readies his sorcery and declares that he is willing to sacrifice anything here, including his pride, including the lives of the sword bearers, including Rokihiro's life, and even including those who resist him today. Now, I am a little bit uncertain whether Kasan was talking about Kunishiki or Shihiro Rokihiro here. I'm not sure. I mean, I guess both count within the sense of the word. I'm really sure. But let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Also, hey, if you're enjoying this video, consider liking and subscribing. Maybe support the Patreon. It really helps me out. It's $5 a month to get you all sorts of cool content and just helps to keep the channel afloat. Anyways, as fast as this traitor is revealed, Hokuzono takes his ass out, or shall I say Azami takes his ass out with one singular mighty punch, might I add. I mean, this man Azami might be the strongest physical fighter within the series, which begs the question, just how strong is Shiba? Shiba was touted by Yura as the pinnacle of sorcery. And right now, Azami is on a fucking decimation streak. But Azami does tell Ichiki to interrogate Kasen, as he'll know every last member of the Shaku. But again, this is the subtle reveal that this is the man who was indeed the traitor who revealed all the information that led up to Rokihiro's murder. I mean, he basically all but says that within the last statement here. Now, I'm not sure how to word this, but I don't know how to feel about this reveal. I don't know if I might have enjoyed this reveal a little bit more had Shihiro been present to see what happened. But the fact that it happened and was dusted off so quick feels extremely on brand for Hokuzono, to be honest with you. He does this shit all the time where he just casually reveals major information within conversations like it's nothing. And it's just sort of part and parcel within the story now. But it is here that we get back into the action as Azami heads off to, and I quote, kill their leader. As we see Yura still manhandling Uraha and Natsuki. Again, remember the shinuichi does enhance the strength of its user, because Shihiro mentions this back in the Rakuzaichi about how Kyura had gotten a lot stronger than previously before he picked up the blade. Now, I think it's going to be more interesting to see an actual fighter like Yura using this sword's power. I mean, Uraha himself has just said that this guy is just, he's not special with a sword, but he is just freakishly athletic. Now, it's not long here before Yura starts to suffer the side effects of the shinuichi here, as the Swordmaster slowly is invading his minds. Now, I saw an interesting theory from Shads on Twitter suggesting that the further the sword invades the minds and saps the user of its energy, it's more like a plant taking nutrients and feeding it to Swordmaster, hence why he is slowly raising up from his slumber here. Now, it would explain how he's managed to stay alive and well all these years. I mean, the flowers blooming on the island of Shikaku could be sapping power from that island and feeding it to him. However, Yura thinks on about how Kyoram even managed this with the severe injuries that he had head to toe. Now, remember, Kiora was pretty much down and out for the count here. He was cut down by Shihiro almost in the exact same Yura has been by Urahai here. They both got slashes across the chest, which, I mean, interesting, I guess. It's kind of weird that it happened twice. Now, interestingly, Hokuto here is lifting off a bookcase of himself with a fairly serious look upon his face that, you know, as he says, it's time to get to work. Now, it's worth remembering that Uraha suspects Hokuto kind of wasn't taking the previous fight seriously, which makes me wonder if Hokuto seeing Yura lock in is also going to prompt him to do the same thing. I mean, if this dude has not been taken seriously and is now going to see, like, his leader being like, oh, okay, so you're locked in, it's time for me to also lock in. I'm very skeptical of all the fates within this room right now, of the peoples here. But it is here that Yura begins his assault. Having Centipede wrap around his hand, you can see Yura's eyes and the imagery of the island of Shikaku here as he activates the Centipede ability. And he actually activates this by clenching his fist, which I think is cool. This whole paneling is just mwah, it's beautiful. Even if the artwork is a little bit scuffed in this chapter, it's still, the paneling is fucking phenomenal. And obviously this will all get fixed for when the volume's released, but I do think it is very cool that we're getting to see someone wield these blades powers without actually having the blade itself. I wonder if somewhere down the line Chihiro could also do this. I mean, it's kind of cool to see that there is a backup option. Like, you can't just disarm an enchanted blade user because they can still use the powers remotely. So it is very, very interesting. Now, we also get a little callback to Hakuri here pulling Uraha's pony as he avoids the centipede blast, which Chihiro again fired off in the train when he was fighting Hirohiko here. But Yora declares that he is coming to kill the Swordmaster. Now, I'm wondering if when someone is wielding the shinuichi like this, they are sort of mentally connected to the swordbearer himself. I like the idea that the swordbearer can just sit in their fucking ear and just talk shit to them and just make their mental fall even faster. I kind of really fuck with that idea. Like, I just imagine like Kiora was fighting for his life against Chihiro and the Swordmaster's just like, pussy, you can't do this shit, give up, pussy, you ain't got it like that. I could just imagine, you know, it'd be kind of funny. Anyways, none other than Azami kicks in the fucking door and readies himself to fight Yura. As we get to see Carsen's face is completely fucking caved in. I mean, seriously, what the fuck are they feeding this man, Azami? Like, seriously, what has this dude got in his fucking Weetabix? Like, what on earth here? This man came out the womb drinking protein shakes and lifting weights to be throwing punches like that. But it is here that Ichiki talks about Azami a little bit more, in which he says Azami isn't just younger, his sorcery is also truly outstanding. And when Kudo said Azami is on a level, he meant every level. He's on a different fucking level, declaring that Azami will stop them. Now, I'm just going to say it right here, this is very shades of Gojo going to fight Sukuna here. I imagine that this fight is going to be fucking great to see here, but as we're finally arriving at Azami getting to fight Yura within this next chapter. Now, I am very much under the impression that Azami is not yet aware that Yura is using the ship's power here, but on top of that, it's also worth mentioning that Yura is still yet to use his own sorcery here, which he can still do, as Kiora was also using his own sorcery, the Storehouse. He was keeping that active in tandem with the blade itself, and obviously it was crumbling, as like it was like a sliding scale. The further he got into the Shinuichi's power, the less he got of his own. But I'm expecting Yura to be able to sort of use his own sorcery quite handy, as well as using the blade itself. Now, I am very nervous and intrigued to see how this fight is going to turn out, but in my opinion, Azami is someone who I've waited a long time to see Hokuzono put into action here. I've been more excited to see Azami fight even more than Shiba, if I'm perfectly honest with you. So I am very, very excited to see what these next chapters hold for us, but I am also very, very scared for this situation right now, because obviously Hokuto is still lurking here. He looks like he's about to lock in, potentially 2v1 Uraha and fucking Natsuki, I guess, maybe, who knows. But also, you've got Yura wielding the Shinuichi now, and it's a scary situation all around here. Now, anyways, that is everything from me. If you've not already, please be sure to like and subscribe, and maybe support the Patreon. And as always, I will catch you guys all in the next one. Much fucking love. Big fucking kisses. Peace.